You're listening to a podcast from 702.
702.
Family Matters.
Family values is what we are discussing this morning on our Family Matters feature and why they matter. And I want to know if that's a thing for you and your family. Have you ever sat down and you expressly stated that these are our family values? Or is it more something your kids are picking up in how you live your lives as parents and what you are instilling in them as values? These are very important, right? The values, because they are, whether it's the family's ideas, the beliefs about what is important and what is not, what is good, what is bad, what's right, what's wrong. And each family has a different set of values that are meaningful to them. And sometimes these are not explicitly stated, right? You don't sit and necessarily talk about value 1, value 2, but they are there as a family. You've got some families who count honesty and friendship as important values. When I spoke to Bongani this morning, he said for him and his family, being a team player is an important value. Remember that we are a team. There's some who choose education or cooperation as their top family values. But these are important because they define what is meaningful to you and your family. Think about whenever someone in your family goes through a teachable moment, that's when your family values will shine through. Even in times of critical decision making, they can act as an anchor and help individuals determine what to do. And I want you to give me a call or send me a WhatsApp voice note about what your values are. And have you stuck to the family values you grew up with, right? How have the values in your family guided the decisions in your life? And what are the most important values you are even teaching your own kids? 011-883-0702. That's where you can give me a call to raise your inputs. The WhatsApp line 072-702-1702. Nozipho Mbatha is a parenting coach at Parenting for Success, and she's joining us in studio this morning to guide us through this discussion. Nozipho, thank you for making time. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and good morning, 702 listeners.
So, why are values so important for families?
Values are just one of those things where we don't deliberately, certainly in my family of origin, it's something that we didn't say, okay, now we're going to set up the values. Yeah. What are we going to do? And I knew that when I have children, I want to do things differently. And it really started around defining what that differently is and why those values that I want to instill are important. Because in my family of origin, for example, the values are different for the parents versus the children. So let's take, for example, a big one that's quite big in our African context is around respect, and saying that we in our home, we're going to value respect and everyone must be, but it's no, the parents and the adults, it doesn't apply to them, but it's going to apply to the children.
It's the kids.
And they must respect the elders, but the elders aren't going to respect the children. And then what happens in that dynamic is that then those values aren't then a family value because it's only for the people that it suits, and when it doesn't suit them, and the children are not watching the values as you say them out and what you speak, but rather how you live them. So when we instill them, they need to be authentically you, and it is not only through one thing that you're going to live them, live those values, but in every single thing that you're going to be doing in your family.
Yeah, and don't they say actions speak louder than words? What's the point of talking about stuff, but you are not living the stuff that you talk about? So even in my family, Nozipho, I don't remember being sat down and told these are the values. Value number 1, value number 2. But you see it in what is being instilled in you as you grow up. You see it in your parents themselves, your siblings as they grow older. So what happens when, I don't agree with a value? Like, let's say, sometimes families practice traditions and cultures, and they say, here we respect ancestors. Yes. For instance,
yes.
Yes. We speak to the ancestors, but this is something that you don't subscribe to. What platform can you create as a family to have a conversation about someone who may have a difference about the values.
Absolutely.
Like even the issue of respect.
Yes.
Because we were raised, you respect the elders, you don't question them, which is a problem. I don't want my kids to think they can't question me. I want them to be able to say, Dad, I actually don't think we should do it that way. But how we were raised, you and I, was, you think you know better?
Yes, yes, that's exactly it. Because, when you are when you have a family where everybody, as a value, for instance, is that everybody's voice matters. And if that value doesn't exist, then that environment doesn't exist where you're able to say, you know what, for me, ukphahla doesn't resonate, but it might resonate for the family, but then I'm different. So if you anchored in a value that says we celebrate all differences and we love you regardless of what your values may be and may be different, there's a lot of conflict that happens in families because of people not agreeing with each other's values. But if you, as a family, say we value everybody and their differences, then you are, you're set to go.
Yeah. What is the lasting impact of the core values on a person's life? I mean, I'm sure as you've grown older, you are seeing how you behave and you link it back to how you were raised and the family values at home. How lasting are they, and how important can they be in just when you're an adult? That's your reference point.
They can be extremely, extremely. You take them with you. What was instilled in you as a value when you are a child and into your adulthood, and when you start to actually see it for truly what it is that when you were, for example, raised in a family where you never had a voice. For example, you grew up to an adult who can't go into the workplace and negotiate your own salary, for example, because you never had a voice as a kid, and you can't suddenly wake up as an adult and now have it because it's something that wasn't valued. A value that says abantu bazothini as a value, you constantly go around, about life worried about abantu bazothini. So those values, like in adult, they shape everything and who you become as an adult.
Sure, my goodness. Imagine. And the thing is also, even with some of these values, when we are at that critical stage in our lives where whatever you consume as a child is definitely going to define you later on, that's when many of us are exposed to those values. And then you grow older and then you are stuck with that. How do you then, is it possible to change those when you are raising your own kids?
Yes.
Because I would argue it's going to demand some level of individual work and self-reflection and say, okay, these are the values I was raised with, but do they work for me or not? Do I want to change that when it gets to my children? Or is it something you just pass it through to the children? Whether I may not have understood it, but let's go with it.
If you haven't taken that time to truly reflect, you are going to pass it down, obviously unconsciously. But when you become conscious of being able to realize that what you were raised with in the value system and how it's showing up in your life, and be conscious around making that change, you're able to say, okay, wait a minute, how am I going to make sure that when it comes to my own children that I do things differently? And that change is hard because it also means that you sometimes, most of the time, because there are people who are used to you having this certain value, and now all of a sudden you've become a different person, then you let go that part of you, and people that you lovingly leave those environments that no longer support your value system, and in the hope that when you do move forward and you instill that in your children, it becomes a completely different thing. Because then what happens is that when the children intrinsically know a value that is lived in the home, then influences outside, like in the peer pressure, in the peer group, they're not gonna conform to all of those because they know this is our value, this is what we live, and they're able to actually even let go of friendships and say, you know what, this friendship doesn't align with me, it doesn't work for me, and they leave.
How do you negotiate that though when you are stopping some family values because they're not working with your family, for instance? I'm at a stage in my life where I don't just follow, I question things, whether it's the Bible, I ask myself questions about it. I don't undermine it, but I'll ask, okay, but why does it say this way? And what was the context at the time? Similarly so with the parents, when they want you, or whatever the case is, I'm just using it as an example, is why do we do it? What's the benefit, right? And back in the day, we were not allowed to ask those questions. It was, this is it, we go with it. But sometimes when you go back to your parents and you say, well, actually, I don't believe in this anymore. And I respect that it works for you, but I've decided to chart my own path. I mean, that can really create some complexity in your dynamics with your family, because family values are so valued by our parents, our grandparents and our mothers and dads. It's like when you are walking away from this, it's almost like they feel so betrayed. So how do you negotiate that with your elders?
That is so true, because sometimes they might even end up disowning you because it's like you've disowned this value of ours, which means you don't want to be part of this family anymore, so off you go, you're no longer part of us, and those conversations can be really hard. But if you know that the value is authentically yours, and regardless of what your family says or what, it's hard. I know it's easier said than done, but because you know the value that brings to your life, you're doing it because that's what matters to you. Yeah,
because you want to be your authentic self also. 011-883-0702. We're in conversation with Nozipho Mbatha, who's a parenting coach at Parenting for Success. And I want you to share with us what your values are. Did you grow up, right, knowing what your family values are? Huh? Maybe you grow up with these values. Maybe they were stated to you as a child that this is what is expected of you. Motoke boto, motoke kabatu. Okay, that's saying, umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. The Fasi had a song about it. You are because of other people, and maybe that's a value in your family. Let me know on 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. And have you gotten to a point where the family values you were raised with were not necessarily working for you anymore, and you charted your own path? How did you negotiate that with your parents, with your grandparents? Please share your experiences with us. Nozipho, please put on your headphones. We'll play some voice notes and take some calls on 011-883-0702 as well.
Hi, Clement. I'd like to remain anonymous, please. But what I'm getting is that values can either be good or bad. I'm definitely finding that in my family, the big value that sort of underpinned a lot of our relations, a family of origin, is secrecy. We have so many secrets and things that we avoid that are glaringly sort of problematic, and we just don't deal with them. So for me, I think it's the idea that values can be both negative and positive, and that sometimes you might need to tackle them before you even get anywhere.
Oh wow, that's such an important point, right? Sometimes secrecy becomes that value in a family where don't go there. We can't talk about that, and that's why it's important that you let go of some of the values that don't work for you. And another one, Nozipho, is when the value becomes we defend each other no matter what. I mean, I've had instances in the family where a certain thing will happen and everybody takes on the defense mode. I'm like, but why are we doing that? This person has to take accountability. If this person has done wrong, let them take accountability. We can't defend Jay because, we are a family that must defend. And I myself don't expect my mom, to rise up and defend me without even wanting me to take accountability when it's very clear I have done something wrong. And you can still get to someone to be held accountable, but still care for them and support them. So Leroy makes a good point, right? That sometimes you've got to let go of some of these. And secrecy is one of those that we grew up knowing that you don't talk about that.
Yeah. And it's so relevant for many, many, many families.
It is. So some more WhatsApp voice notes on 072-702-1702. Calls on 011-883-0702. Going straight to more of the WhatsApp and calls after the break.
702.
Family Matters.
24 minutes after 11 o'clock. We're talking about family values in our Family Matters feature this morning. We got some WhatsApp voice notes about what your family values are. And I want to know, what works for you? What doesn't work? Because, as Leroy was saying, not all family values are going to work for you. Sometimes you've got to let go of some of them. That this concept of secrecy. And that's why a lot of people have not been able to even talk about how and who violated them. Because always we were taught you can't talk about certain things. I mean, there are so many things in families that are kept secret to this day. They can't be spoken about, and people are going through so much, dealing with the trauma, but they can't talk about it within the family setup, because that's one of the values, right? There are people who defend each other regardless of whether that family member has done something wrong or right. Your family value is, we are going to come at your defense no matter what happens. So, what family values have worked for you? What are those that haven't worked for you, that you've had to let go? And what are you instilling in your own children? And do you sit them down and say, these are our values? Or is that something you let them see through your actions?
Clement, man. I'm thinking, what values do we have as a people, or as my family, as an African family? What values was I taught? That's a difficult one. But one thing that I can take from my family is that you work for your own food. You work hard for everything. And then the other thing is that education is important. No one can take away your education. No one can take away your certificate of education. The other thing, looking after each other, like raising abashana, raising each other as siblings, as uncles, as all that. Sure.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. I'll take more of your WhatsApps on that. There's someone who was asking earlier, Nozipho, whether their family values in adolescence and whether they can help with dealing, for instance, with peer pressure. You started and explained a little bit on this, but how can these values help when you are an adult or when you are an adolescent? Because we think of themselves as, this is what we do as a family, but they can come very handy even with dealing with issues outside of this family structure.
Absolutely. And all boundaries that are set for yourself when you become an adult, or when you're a teenager and setting your own boundaries around your peer groups, when they are grounded in a family value that's authentically you, they can really help you in make decisions on things that are important to you. And if you are, for sure that this doesn't feel, you actually even know this doesn't feel right and it's not aligned to my family value, even with people, like, you stay away, and that's how they can also serve you.
Yeah. Tabo, you calling us from Tembisa. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Clement.
Hey, Tada.
Clement, this is quite an interesting subject and very broad for that matter. Why I say that is because Clement, yes, I mean, I'm one of those people who was never set down, by our elders or parents to say, these are the set of values in the family, And with that, yes, we know that respect, love are things that have been there. We have been seeing in the families. But when it comes to certain things like your belief in ancestors and all those kind of things, I will give you a short story of my life. I mean, I'm one person who grew up without without knowing my biological father. And as I grew up, certain things started happening, things that were sort of life-threatening, And, as an African, you would go to an extent of sort of consulting, trying to find out why are certain things happening. And at the end, I was referred back to my father to say, you need to go back to your father and ask your father to do certain things for you. One of the things that, I was asked to do was for my father to take me to my grandfather's, grave, and of which I had to go out and look for my father, and my father did that for me. And immediately after my father did that for me, all those things that were happening disappeared. So, a few weeks ago, I sat down with my children, and they asked me the same question to say that, what is your take? Would you believe on ancestors? And, without me really saying to them, I believe in ancestors, I had to start by relating my life story to them, to say, this is what happened to me. And for that reason, I recognize, the ancestors. I might not exactly know what to do for them, what role they play in my life, but the fact of the matter is, based on my life experience, what I have experienced, I believe that, the so-called ancestors are there and they've got a role in our lives. And I also went on to ask them a question to say, the very same question that you are asking me, how would you like to relate to me one day when I am no more? You know what I'm saying? I'm your father, I'm sitting here with you, I'm talking to you today, but one day when I'm gone, how would you like to relate to me? So it's a very difficult thing. I don't prefer sitting down and saying, guys, we in this family, we believe in ancestors, we need to do this and that, because of the fact that I have experienced that.
Yeah.
Life, everyone's life, it's unique in their own way. And if I say to you, follow this route, what if that is not the route that was not meant for you?
Exactly. And I like that option you also give, right? It's not the be-all, right, where you say, this is what we are following in the households. You're saying, this is my experience, this is what worked for me. It may or may not work for you. Here's a voice note.
Hi, 702. Our family values were never communicated to us. It is.
I apologize. Let me stop that. I lost track of time. I just saw it's 11:32. We'll play that after the latest in Eyewitness News headlines.
702.
Family Matters.
All right, so we'll be listening to 702 Afternoons to hear who was saved. Was it the car or was it the dog? That's between 1 and 3 p.m. Let's continue with our Family Matters feature. We're discussing family values on our Family Matters feature this morning. Is that a thing for you and your family? Are there certain values you've had to let go of? Let us know on 011-883-0702. Your WhatsApps are coming through on 072-702-1702.
Thing that we got to see. For instance, my mom never liked the idea of taking turns in terms of house chores. She always wanted us to do it together, help each other. Not that one person washes the dishes today and tomorrow it's the next person. She never liked that idea. She always wanted us to help one another, help each other in anything that you do in J, just help one another. And I didn't like it at that time because I didn't understand it. It's not something that I got to understand as an adult. So she instilled that value of helping one another as siblings.
Oh, that's incredible. I like that. There's a message here from someone else who says, "Hi, Clement. I'm 25 years of age. I live in Boksburg with my mom and siblings. We grew at my grandparents' house until I was 19 or so. And what I've observed is that we never talk about this stuff. But I can say that the biggest family value is self-success, because we come from an unprivileged family. So a person's success is given the front seat over everything. Looking at it, everyone is kind of selfish. My grandparents, the children are so selfish as well towards each other, i.e. my uncles, aunt, mom, and it's somehow rubbing off onto me. So this person says, a person's success, when you've got that success, you're given the front seat over everything. Oh my God, and we don't talk about this a lot, Nozipho. Think about it. When there's someone in your family like that auntie, sometimes we joke and say it's the rich auntie. When there's a funeral or gunomsebenzi, the auntie has got to have a say of what salads are we cooking or what time is the funeral going to be, because for some reason you've got more weight because of your success. And I see it a lot in many families where sometimes even in my own family, they think because you work on the radio and TV, you are somehow more important than others. So now, even when there's important meetings and decisions that have to be taken, now you're brought into meetings and you're thinking, but there are other cousins who are older who can be part of this and make. And sometimes they don't think about it, but it indirectly happens that way. So how do you, because this listener says it's rubbing off him or her or they as well. So how do you negotiate that with yourself? I have decided I'm going to be intentional and say, I'm not going to be in that meeting because I know of older cousins or uncles who can take the same decisions. How do you negotiate that?
Yeah, it comes from the place, like you're saying, of being genuinely intentional about it. Because there's obviously something, as the listener is saying, that's not sitting well with her, with how it's going. So if you're able to take a step back and be honest with yourself to say, what is it that's not working for me here? You have two choices. Either you talk about it and say, this is not aligning with me and I will be removing myself and this is what I'm going to do. Or you gently and swiftly remove yourself from it because it's not aligned. And it's so common in many, many families where whether it is because you've got the best degree or whatever, so and you are viewed and your opinions matter more than anybody else based on the status that you've been given.
Yeah, and sometimes families do that because, Clement is going to withdraw his resources. So Clement is not going to give us money if we don't go with his ideas. So Clement wants the unveiling to be on the 1st of August, and we want it to be on the 16th. But because Clement is bringing in the money, they start accommodating you. And I think a lot of us need to reflect. If you are in a family where your advice is somehow valued more than the other, you need to also reflect. And when you are called into those meetings, ask them, but why don't we bring in Sis Thuli? Why don't you bring in Brajon? Because they can add value here more than I will. And we stop using this thing of resources we have to try and position ourselves in these big decision-making structures. And I think that's a reflection all of us have got to make. Nongeba, you're calling from Johannesburg. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Speaking to Nongeba.
Hi, Nongeba. Go ahead.
Yeah, Clement. I grew up in
Nongeba, I'm struggling to hear you. I'm putting you back to the producers. I don't know if it's your phone or you're speaking low, but let's try and work out the line because I want to hear what you've got to say, but I need you to project more so we can hear you. In the meantime, let's take Nkateko in Pretoria. Good morning, Nkateko.
Morning, Clement, and morning to the listeners.
Good morning.
Yes. So the family value that was instilled in us was that of hospitality. So my parents were very, very hospitable, and I also did hospitality very, very well. But because there was no boundaries, we were exposed to a lot of harm as well, along with the beautiful value of hospitality and being, to other people, but at the same time, we were then exposed to a lot of harm.
So because they opened this home and they wanted just to be so hospitable and
yeah, absolutely. And even the whole concept of self-worth, because, whether somebody comes in at 2 a.m. or whatever time, we had to move out of our rooms, to accommodate the people that are more destitute than us or that are needy than us. So it then implants in you that you are not as worthy or as deserving than the nenext person who just randomly comes, be it that you have to give them a plate of your food for a Sunday meal or, your jersey or your blanket or even your room. In our case, it was, more often the girls' room.
Yeah, wow. Katako, thank you for raising that. Sometimes it's an incredible family value. Your parents are hospitable, but sometimes there can be so much harm on the kids themselves. Nongeba, let's try that line again in Joburg. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, much better. Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking to Nongeba. Yeah, it goes like this. In my family, we grew up that my father would like us to go to church every day, and we believe in God. Then he said to us, either you have faith in God or umuthi, but believe in something. Then when I grew up, I tried to instill that to my kids that we should go to church because I'm an ordained pastor.
Yeah.
Mamela, I'm a single pastor. Then I wanted my boy to go to church. around age 12, they decided not to go to church, and I was embarrassed. Only this year, my youngest son told me that, Mama, I was reading the Bible at the age of 12. I saw something, and I raised it in the class. They couldn't answer me. I decided not to go to church. But then I'm at peace with it because I've learned that it's not about me, it's about them. If they have their own belief, as long as they believe in something, it's okay. They can pray. I show them that we pray for anything. We believe in God because God is above everything. But I'm so happy that they believe in something, and I let them to be free to believe in whatever they believe because they question it. And I'm at peace.
Oh, Nongeba, that's incredible. You know, sometimes when people are, as an ordained pastor yourself, sometimes pastors take this rigid approach of this is how things are going to be in this household, because also you are so close to, because you are a pastor yourself, but to still allow your children that level of freedom is so commendable. Thank you, Nongeba, for sharing that with us in Johannesburg. Lebo, you are in Sandton. Hi.
Hi, Clement. Good show as always. So the family value from childhood growing up in Limpopo was about respecting the next person, regardless how old or young. And, interesting being back in Maramurere this weekend, and I saw that everywhere. Old and young equally. Someone coming to greet or walking past the street and raising a hand, good morning, Abshin. And I'm like, goodness, I don't see that enough in Johannesburg or in Gauteng. And it just brought me to the sense of self-respect so I can respect the next person. And I want to go back to Maramurere when I grow old and reside there. That's it. Enough with this beautiful fleshy life in Johannesburg.
Yes. You know what, Lebo? I used to think at some point that maybe, your neighbors have got an issue with you because you are growing. Because I'm used to that, hey, dumelang, hello. And when you move into in the suburbs and you are in this place where, and sometimes we don't even know our neighbors. It's taken time for me to get used to the life in the burbs where sometimes you're not even going to know your neighbor. You're not going to talk to your neighbor for 3 years, even though you've been their neighbor. And it's just the weirdest thing. But what I enjoy when I'm home is just how hospitable everybody is, how warm everybody is, how you can go ask for sugar, right? Next door or next door. And that's something that I really incredibly miss. You do grow to, form relationships, which I have with some of your neighbors, wherever in your estate and down the street where you live, and you can have that kind of relationship with them. And I'm lucky to have neighbors that I have that kind of a relationship with now. But before, you've got to be intentional about it and actually form that relationship. Otherwise, you are increasingly going to be driving out to go get milk or to go get flour when you just need 1 cup, Nozipho, and you could ask your neighbor for it. But because you don't even know them, you're not going to do so. Nandi in Lenasia, good morning.
Hi, morning, Clement. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you very much. Nice show, man.
Thank you.
What I can say is I remember back then when we grew up from the Eastern Cape, we used to do that, whereby you know that your neighbor, they can help you with meal if you don't have meal. But right now, recently, you can see that people are no longer doing that because of this thing of having money. If the other one is having more money, is getting respected than the other, even within the family where I grew up, you understand? Because of he has got money or he is more educated than others, then that person is treated better than the others, or he is being respected even if he is young. You understand?
Yeah.
Then you get family to replace the elder one. Understand?
Yeah.
You know what the duties of an elder one at home, if they are maybe in savings, you understand? Then you find out that the youngest one, because of he has got money, he is educated, he's the one who's doing what is supposed to be done by the eldest one. So you see that things have changed. You understand? It's no longer the same as before because of money and I've experienced that a lot.
Yeah. All right. Nandi, thank you for sharing that with us. Nandi in Lenasia.
Hi, Clement. I agree with this lady who just called in now. I think the other value that I really let go, it's this thing of putting people first. other than your children. It's like, no, by 80 Bailey, whatever. So I made sure that all my kids have their own rooms. And if you're a visitor, you're going to sleep, go the living room or outside room. No child of mine is going to leave a bed for a visitor. Marimpo in Pretoria.
Wow. Do you remember, Nozipho, growing up, even when it's time to eat, asili first. Yes. The visitors must eat first.
Yes.
And then we are going to eat, after. I mean, that's what we did growing up. And I wonder what that does to a psyche of a child growing up and seeing that, okay, when there are certain people visiting us, we are going to take out the best glasses. Remember the room divider used to have those iprinki that is for special occasions. So, what does that do to your psyche where the visitors are so valued that we give them the best treatment, the best plates, they eat first, you eat last, you're going to sleep on the floor when there are people. What does that do? And how do we move away from that concept of thinking that the kids, because our kids, must just come second when we've got visitors?
Yeah, it reinforces the belief in the kids that they don't matter.
Yeah.
And that comes with a whole lot of other challenges when growing up believing that, even the visitor will get the best piece of chicken.
Yes.
And then you're going to get
just the relish. As we've been traumatized. What happens when education is a family value and someone happens to fall outside of that, someone who is within a family? Because that's when you start seeing the respect that is afforded to people, right? Because the parents have always valued education, and maybe you are even an artist, let's say.
Absolutely.
Right? You didn't think it was valuable to go to university, or maybe you went to study something in the arts, but your parents always wanted you to be a doctor. Because parents sometimes can now even respect their kids based on the education level because of their values around education.
Absolutely. And the danger is that sometimes you even find children going to university to study courses that they don't want to study, getting into the workplace, doing jobs that they actually don't want to even do because they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it to please the parents. And that is awful, to do a soul-crushing job so that you can please your parents at the end of the day.
Yeah, you don't want to please your parents. So just lastly, tips for parents out there who are raising kids and they've never intentionally thought about the issue of values. How do they raise them? Is it best to sit your kids down and say, these are our values as a family, and these are values that can help you out as well, or just live the values and the kids can learn from that? What's best to do?
I think it's a combination of both, and it's also not a once-off conversation to have just once and having the dinner table and off you go, that now we're done discussing our values, but it's as an ongoing. The tip I can give is to have an ongoing conversation and make examples through your own life on how this value is important to you. You can start off and saying, today we're going to have dinner together twice a week because we value connection. And this is how we're going to instill the value of connection every single day.
Yeah, I love the dinner thing. I've got friends who grew up in homes that they used to have dinner together. And sometimes when they visit, I'll we can sit in the kitchen or sit outside. They're like, no, we have to set the table. That's always been a thing. That this is a moment for people to connect and sit, because with their families, that's what they did. And I like that concept because for the first time I used my dinner table in 2 years. Because I was like, it's supposed to be there to look pretty. It's not for us to go and sit. We didn't eat like that. It can be crazy. Ntlantla, in Joburg, you'll be our last call. Hi.
Clement, good morning.
Sure.
I'd like to differ with you guys. That whenever you got visitors, members, to me, what happened in my family, it taught me that the visitors are actually special. It teaches you how to treat others with kindness, how you appreciate the other people who are visiting you. Yes, it will differ from a person to person, depending how they grow up.
Yeah.
To me, it taught me how to respect the next person, not to be selfish. Compromising for the other.
Yeah.
It was the best thing which they ever taught me.
Yeah, no, got you, Ntlantla. I think that's a fair point. But in you doing that, you mustn't make other people in the family feel like they are less off. And I think you can still show respect to someone else, compromise and be appreciative towards them without making your kids or other family members think they don't matter when that person is around. We're out of time. Nozipho Mbatha, parenting coach at Parenting for Success. Thank you so much for guiding us through this discussion.
Thank you so much.